It all began to unravel after graduation. My fiancée, Chloe, suddenly announced she wanted to stay and work at the university. The declaration was so out of character that a cold suspicion immediately took root in my mind. Right then, I knew it had something to do with her advisor. We had a conversation about it, one of those brutally honest talks that can either save a relationship or shatter it completely. I laid out the options as I saw them. Either we call off the engagement, or she had to ensure her advisor was reassigned to a different department. She didn't give me an answer right away. Instead, she vanished for an entire night, returning the next morning with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless, agonizing decision. She looked at me, her expression grim, and said only one thing: "The engagement is still on." On the day of our engagement party, the grand ballroom was filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of champagne flutes. I stood beside Chloe, the warmth of the spotlights feeling like a promise of our bright future. Just as she was about to slide the engagement ring onto my finger, the heavy oak doors of the hall burst open. A woman I'd never seen before stood there, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. Her voice cut through the celebratory atmosphere like a shard of glass. "Chloe, are you really leaving me and the baby?" Chloe's fingers, which had been moments from placing the ring on my hand, instinctively curled back, her knuckles white. I grabbed her wrist, my grip firm, and leaned in to whisper a warning in her ear. "If you walk out of here, this isn't over." Her eyes were fixed on the diamond ring, a conflict raging within them. For a heart-stopping second, I thought she would choose me, that she would complete the ceremony. But just as she moved to put it on, the baby in the woman's arms began to wail, a sharp, piercing cry that seemed to seal our fate. Chloe pulled her hand away, murmured a hasty apology to the stunned crowd, and walked away without a single glance back in my direction. "Leo, you decide what to do," my dad said, his voice a low, steady presence beside me. "No matter what, the family's got your back." He shot a piercing look towards Chloe's parents, who were frozen in a state of mortified shock. The whispers started almost immediately. "Can't judge a book by its cover. People are so unpredictable. I always thought it was strange how Chloe disappeared for half a year. Turns out she was off having a kid with another guy. Is this how the Vances raise their children? If she were my daughter, she'd get a real beating for this." I just stood there, stunned. The words washed over me, but none of it felt real. Chloe's dream, or so she had always told me, was to become a well-known singer. That's why her sudden announcement about wanting to work at the university had been such a red flag. I knew, in that moment, that she must have fallen for her advisor. My best friend Mark had laughed at me, telling me I was being overly sensitive. "Staying at the university is normal, isn't it? It's a stable job with summer and winter breaks," he'd said. I smirked to myself at the memory, because Mark didn't know the full extent of our family's background. For her 21st birthday, Chloe's gift from my family was a significant share of the Sterling Corporation's profits. With her financial situation, she could do anything she wanted. There was no conceivable reason she would ever want a 9-to-5 job at a university. The only real point of contention between us had always been our future plans. I was destined to inherit the family business, which required me to study abroad for a few years to gain the necessary experience. Chloe, on the other hand, had no concrete goals. She just wanted to have fun and live freely. I never had a problem with that. If she didn't want to study abroad with me, I wasn't going to force her. I vividly remember the day I decided to go. She hugged me tightly, her voice soft as she comforted me. "I don't want to live a life where I can see the end from the beginning," she'd said. "What if I really become a star? You'll be the pop star's husband then. I'll come visit you overseas. Isn't that more thrilling?" I was convinced by her vision of a more exciting future, so I left the country. She stayed behind for her freedom and her supposed dreams. Both of our families had suggested we get engaged before I left, but I resisted the pressure. Back then, my thinking was simple. Let her chase her dreams. Marriage shouldn't be a restraint. I never imagined that her freedom would include having a child with another man. All those times I thought she was too busy with performances to visit me, she was actually pregnant with Professor Davies's child. In hindsight, all the signs were there. I had just chosen to ignore them. "At least now the truth is out," Mark said, his voice laced with sympathy as he looked at me. "We don't have to keep guessing." He tried to lighten the mood. "Bro, the next one will be better." His comment made me chuckle, a hollow, humorless sound. But in the next second, a tear I hadn't realized was forming hit the back of my hand. I lifted my head, using my palm to cover my eyes as I heard a deep sigh from nearby. My parents were seeing the last of the guests out. The once grand ballroom now felt cavernous and empty, with fewer than 10 of us remaining. That's when Chloe's parents finally approached me. "Leo, you're a good kid," Chloe's mother began, her face etched with shame. "We're so sorry for what happened today. This is Chloe's fault, and it's our fault for not managing our daughter better. Who would have thought she'd get involved with her professor?" "Don't worry, we'll handle this." I interrupted her before she could continue. "There's no need, Mrs. Vance. He's still your grandson after all. This is your family's issue, and my family shouldn't get involved." I made it clear I wanted them to leave. "It's been a long day, so I won't see you out." Chloe's parents looked deeply uncomfortable, but couldn't find the words to respond. Before leaving, her father made one last, desperate attempt. "Leo, I'll offer you 30% of our shares if you'll give the child a name. We can treat it as an adoption, and our families can bury this whole scandal." I let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Why would the Sterlings risk their reputation for your scandal?" His face turned an awkward shade of red with embarrassment. Seeing my firm stance, they finally left, their shoulders slumped in dejection. I didn't expect to see them again so soon, but there they were at a college reunion a few weeks later. Chloe and Professor Davies stood confidently in the middle of the room, basking in a sea of praises and congratulations from our former classmates. "Chloe is really the Vance's second daughter, isn't she? Kept that a secret too well," one classmate chimed in. "Just out for some life experience and got caught up in this?" another added. "Professor, you two already have a child. You should have invited us to the wedding sooner." Ken nodded politely to the crowd. "You all know Chloe's special status. This is just a casual get-together, our treat," he announced, which ignited a round of cheers. Chloe remained by his side, gently patting her baby, her face glowing with the bliss of a new mother. I felt a cold anger creeping through me as I clenched my fists. To accept blessings so publicly felt like a deliberate slap in my face. The entire scene felt utterly absurd. Just yesterday, she was nearly my fiancée, and now she was standing here with another man's child, soaking in the approval of our peers. Mark was even angrier than I was. He grabbed a drink and strode toward them, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "When did Professor Davies and Chloe get married and have a child?" he asked, emphasizing each word heavily. Davies's face immediately fell, as everyone's attention shifted to Mark. Then, Mark dropped the bombshell. "Did you all know that Chloe has been engaged this entire time? Tell me, Professor, as an educator, do you get some kind of thrill from being the other man?" It was like a bomb going off in the room. All eyes were now on Davies. Those who had just been congratulating him took a noticeable step back, grouping together to whisper amongst themselves. Chloe suddenly stepped in front of Davies, shielding him from the prying eyes. "Before you know the truth, I'd advise you to hold your tongue and avoid making trouble for yourself," she warned Mark, completely unfazed. She then shot a fierce look in my direction before addressing the room. Since we're all here, I might as well state it clearly. Yes, Leo and I were engaged, but it was an arrangement made by our families. It doesn't reflect my personal wishes. As an independent individual, I believe I have the right to pursue love. Some people still act like we're living in the past when arranged marriages were the norm. I'm not letting anyone chain my life down with marriage. Chloe lifted her chin, exuding a misplaced confidence, and a few of our classmates looked almost ready to cheer for her supposed bravery. I couldn't believe she was trying to shift the blame onto me, painting me as some oppressive figure from a bygone era. She thought I'd still be the fiancé who would tolerate anything for her sake. I let out a cold chuckle and stepped forward. So, you're saying you never agreed to the engagement? Why didn't you refuse earlier? How many benefits has your family received from mine because of this arrangement? You're not a child, Chloe. You had countless opportunities to tell me before our engagement banquet, yet you chose not to. Don't act so high and mighty. You're disgusting. Chloe stayed silent, her expression ugly. Davies jumped in to defend her. Leo, it's not like that. Chloe wanted to tell you earlier, but you were preparing to go abroad. She didn't want to mess things up for you. She planned to explain everything when you got back. She was scared you'd be mad, but she did have feelings for you. Keeping it from you was for your own sake, he said, his tone self-righteous. Their excuses made me sick. Mark couldn't help himself. Are you saying Leo should just bow down and thank you, cheaters? He snapped. Shut up, Chloe fumed. Professor Davies and I never did anything while I was in school, she protested. Mark scoffed. So what? You can't change the fact that you were his student. Chloe looked at me, but offered no further explanation. She just grabbed Davies' arm and left. Professor Davies had been my class teacher. When Chloe decided to switch to my major, she was transferred into our class. I had noticed her visiting his office frequently and asked her about it once. She just laughed and clung to my arm, saying she wanted to spend more time near me and was just making up for missed classes. Getting jealous over nothing, she had teased. Do you really think I'm cheating on you? I frowned. Chloe, I'm a guy too. The way he looks at you isn't right. She brushed it off, accusing me of being overly possessive. Back then, I couldn't tell if it was my own jealousy or a genuine intuition, so I dropped the subject. Looking back now, it's painfully clear that he had feelings for her all along. He just couldn't make the first move because of his position. For Chloe to take such a risk, to go behind my back and have a child with him, was truly something else. That night, I packed up everything in my house that was related to Chloe. I considered what to do with the expensive gifts I'd given her, and ended up sending them all back to her family home. I didn't expect her mom to show up at my door a day later, gifts in tow. Leo, Chloe put her heart into choosing these for you. Don't they show how much she cared? She pleaded. Everyone makes mistakes, especially when they're young. Isn't it normal to date around a bit before marriage? For the sake of our family's long-standing ties, please think this over. And what your uncle said the other day still stands. What do you think? I forced a smile. Mrs. Vance, would Mr. Vance have married you if you'd had a child with another man right before your wedding? Dating is normal, yes. But from the day we set our engagement, I stayed away from other girls. I didn't want to hurt anyone. As her mother was pleading with me, Chloe herself stepped out from behind her. She confronted me directly. But you never asked me why I did it, why I chose that path. Leo, would you believe me if I said I felt trapped? Are you really okay with severing our ties just like this? Doesn't it hurt me too? I listened calmly to everything she said, my face a placid mask. Chloe, this is me giving us a dignified end, I replied. She broke down, shouting, I don't want dignity. I want a husband who truly loves me. I want to marry a real person, not some heartless corporate heir. My heart twisted at her words. So this was how she saw me. Sure, love isn't everything in life, but I had given her all the love I could. Silence filled the air, and I'm sure everyone thought I was unbothered by her outburst. But my dad, standing on the second-floor landing, saw my hands shaking. He flew down the stairs and slapped Chloe hard across the face. "How could the Vances raise such a heartless brat?" he shouted. Instinctively, Chloe shoved him. "No one's ever hit me before," she yelled. I quickly rushed to steady my dad, shocked by her reaction. His hand was still trembling as Chloe, her voice hoarse, lashed out again. "If you hadn't made Leo so rigid with all your rules, we wouldn't be in this mess. It's all your fault." "Shut up," I roared. "Chloe, you have no right to criticize my father. Get out of my house." After she finally left, an overwhelming exhaustion swept through me. My dad hadn't recovered from the shock of it all. He just stared blankly at me, wanting to say something, but then he simply lowered his head and went back upstairs. I didn't know how to comfort him. After revealing her true feelings, Chloe became more openly affectionate towards Professor Davies. Not only did she get the child registered under the Vance family name, but she also used her family's connections to get Davies a more respectable job. On his birthday, she booked a table at the most exclusive, hard-to-get-into restaurant in the city and posted a picture of them together. Everyone in our social circle knew about it instantly. Friends sent me screenshots of her post. "Leo, are you just going to let this slide? You're seriously going to put up with this?" I didn't reply. I just quietly opened the post and saw a flood of comments. Most were mocking and sarcastic. "Chloe, you're amazing. You actually bagged your own teacher. If you didn't want to marry Leo, you should have just said so. Why waste his time? Leo is my ideal man. You can play around with a guy like that, but isn't it embarrassing to bring him out in public?" I was scrolling through the comments when I saw one that had been pinned to the top. It was from Chloe. "Background doesn't determine a person's ability, and Ken is the love of my life. Disrespecting him is disrespecting me." And just like that, all the mocking comments vanished. My gaze turned colder. Chloe was making a public statement for Davies while openly slapping me in the face. What I didn't expect was that this wasn't even the worst of her actions. Because of Chloe's last stunt, my dad hadn't been sleeping well for days. Today, he couldn't even get out of bed. I was terrified and quickly called for an ambulance. The best treatment for his condition was at the hospital owned by the Vance family. With my hand shaking, I dialed Chloe's number, hoping she would at least arrange for a doctor. She hung up on me 3 times. Having no other choice, I rushed my dad to their hospital myself, but we couldn't even get into the emergency room. A nervous nurse kept apologizing. "Mr. Sterling, there's no room. All the doctors are busy. If you wait, I'm afraid it'll be too late." Of course, I knew that. But at that moment, I had no better option. I kept pleading with the nurse. "The Vance Hospital has my—" I was about to say that I held shares in the hospital, but before I could finish, Chloe's loud voice cut me off. "No one can break hospital rules today, not even you, Leo. Didn't you cut ties with the Vances? Does it still matter who you are?" She stood there, blocking the way. "I can overlook what happened and arrange a room and a doctor, but he must apologize." She pointed at my father, who was slumped over in my arms. Her eyes were filled with resentment. Because of that one slap, she was holding a grudge against the man who had cared for her for years. My heart went ice cold. A stroke is no small thing, and I didn't dare delay any longer. I had to give in a little. "Chloe, how about I apologize to you? Just think of all the years my dad cared for you." "No way," she spat. "He slapped me and he humiliated Ken. Not making him kneel is already showing mercy." She blocked the hallway, completely unconcerned with the stares of the people around us, insistent that my father apologize. The crowd grew larger. Just when everyone thought my father would be forced to apologize. The sound of sirens echoed from outside. 5 or 6 doctors from the best private hospital in North City rushed in and bowed to me, efficiently taking over. Before getting into the new ambulance, I glanced back at a stunned Chloe and dialed a number on my phone. "Pull the plug on all projects with Vance Holdings," I said into the phone. "In 1 month, I don't want to see them as a profitable company." The color drained from Chloe's face. She watched as the professionally trained private hospital team took charge with swift efficiency. She wanted to say something, but one look from me silenced her. There was no warmth left in my gaze, only a chilling coldness. The murmurs from the crowd, their eyes shifting to Chloe, were complex and hard to read. She felt her face burn, not from the memory of the slap, but from my last words, which stabbed at her pride like an icy dagger. "Leo, how dare you!" she yelled at the now empty doorway. Her voice, however, carried a faint tremor. She clenched her fist, nails digging into her palm, and took out her phone to send me a message. "What right do you have to speak to the Vances in that tone? Who do you think you are?" I saw the message right after getting my dad settled into the surgery room. A flash of anger crossed my eyes. "Who am I? What right do I have?" "Chloe, you'll find out soon enough." I didn't reply. I just sat there, anxiously watching the light above the surgery room door. Chloe stood in the hospital's lobby, a wave of fear crashing over her after her anger faded. "Chloe?" Davies appeared at her side at some point, his face lined with concern and a hint of tension. "Don't worry, Leo's just angry. He won't actually do it." He had, of course, heard my words about pulling out of the Vance Holdings projects, so he rushed to comfort her. Chloe grabbed his hand, trying to suppress her trembling. "Yeah, Leo just got back from studying abroad. He doesn't have that kind of pull in the company. I was just overthinking because I care too much." Chloe snapped back to reality, forcing down the rising panic and trying to maintain the dignity of a Miss Vance. She took a deep breath and forced a smile for Davies. "It's no big deal. What can he stir up? The Vances won't back down. Let's go see the baby. The nurse said he woke up and was looking for you." She gripped Davies's hand, seeking his warmth to dispel the chill creeping inside her. But his hand was a bit cool, too. He looked back in the direction the ambulance had disappeared, his eyes unreadable behind his glasses. At the hospital, the surgery light finally went out. I rushed forward. The doctor gave me a reassuring look. "Your father had a sudden outburst. The strong emotions triggered a vascular spasm in his brain. Luckily, you brought him here in time, and it didn't lead to a major stroke." The doctor paused, glanced at me, and then continued. "But there are noticeable after effects. His muscle strength on his left side is reduced, and his speech is temporarily affected. He's going to need a lot of rehab. Also, he must stay calm. No more stress." I listened in silence, frowning hard. I gently held my dad's limp hand, feeling its cold softness. "Dad, don't worry," I thought. "There won't be a next time. Those who wronged you won't get away with it." By the time I had everything sorted out, it was late at night. My phone had buzzed with a dozen messages. Our mutual friends told me that Chloe and Davies had gone viral. It turned out someone had filmed them comforting each other in the hospital lobby. The poster, a blogger with a knack for capturing dramatic hospital scenes and a modest following, had spun it into a captivating tale. It blew up fast. People recognized Davies. Some even sent anonymous tips to the blogger, saying he was once a college professor and Chloe was his student. Once outed online, they readily admitted to their romance saga, which surprisingly earned them a fair bit of goodwill. Davies's old academic papers resurfaced online, and people started calling him a breath of fresh air, a true scholar. I couldn't help but scoff, gripping my phone tightly. Chloe's recklessness, Davies's cowardly facade, and her parents' greedy shamelessness were like suffocating vines wrapped around me. Dignity? I had offered them dignity, but they tore it apart and tried to fling the pieces back in my face, humiliating me and hurting my family. Let them enjoy it while they can, because days like these won't last. In just 3 days, 10 deals integral to the Vance family's business were abruptly terminated. The reasons given were quite clear, citing mismanagement, leadership misconduct, and significant operational risks and trust issues. These cancellations meant Vance Holdings lost millions in orders and future profits. Far worse, it shook their market status and their standing in the value chain. Their stock plummeted. Chloe's mom's phone rang off the hook with demanding partners, panicked shareholders, and rivals who were reveling in their misery. Cornered, she tried calling me, but never got through. So, she came to Sterling Corp's headquarters to see my dad, only to be politely blocked by the secretary downstairs. Mr. Sterling is fully booked and not seeing anyone. For the first time in her life, Chloe's mother found herself pleading with the secretary. Please, just let me speak with him, even just on the phone. It's really urgent. If you refuse, I'll jump, she threatened, pointing to the window on the 30th floor. The secretary couldn't hold her off any longer and dialed the inside line to explain. But with my dad hospitalized because of her daughter's actions, I wasn't about to let the Vances off the hook. When the call connected, my dad didn't let Chloe's mom say a single word. He just said coldly, "Leo is the current president of the group. His decision is Sterling Corp's decision," and then hung up. Chloe's mom was at a complete loss. She had assumed my dad was behind it all, but didn't realize that the Vances' downfall was entirely my doing. Furious, her vision blurring with rage, she finally understood that this time, the Sterlings were all in to break ties. Her rage turned on Chloe. Storming into her apartment, she confronted her daughter. "Look at what you've caused! All of this for a man who's beneath you? You even stopped the chairman from getting medical treatment? Chloe, what is wrong with you? Don't you get it? The Sterlings were our biggest ally. Now look, they've struck back, and the Vances are doomed. Are you happy now?" Chloe, dodging her mom's furious gaze, glanced at Davies, who was trying to distract the baby on the couch. She attempted to defend herself. "Mom, Leo's dad hit me first. They pushed us too far. Why should we have to depend on them? We can—" Smack. Her mother's slap hit hard, far harder than my dad's had. Chloe's cheek swelled instantly, her ear buzzing. She had never seen this side of her mother before, and broke down in tears. But her mom wasn't finished. "You? What do you have? Without the Vances, who are you, Chloe? How long can your little dividends support that precious man and child of yours? Ken's current job is thanks to our family's connections. Wake up, Chloe, apologize to Leo, beg him. Drop that worthless pride of yours or get ready to become a street beggar." Chloe froze, her entire body cold. Her mother's fury tore apart the idyllic fantasy she had been weaving with love and freedom. She had thought her status allowed her to balance between love and material wealth, enjoying genuine emotions from Davies without giving up her comforts. She had even seen my sense of duty and family responsibility as shackles. But now, reality hit her hard. Without the Vance family's protection, her carefully crafted love utopia was nothing but a sandcastle. Watching Davies, her feelings were a tangled mess of emotions. He was holding the baby, avoiding her gaze, and spoke softly. "Chloe, your aunt was also anxious. Things are really bad now." "Are you scared?" Chloe's voice had a sharp edge to it. "Afraid of living a rough life with me?" "No, how could I be?" Davies immediately denied it, his tone a bit too urgent, which only made it feel weak. "I'm just worried about you and the baby, and the Vances. After all, what?" Chloe pressed, the tension inside her growing tighter. "After all, Leo seems to be really serious this time." Davies' voice dropped. Chloe's heart sank to rock bottom. She finally realized it. The person who once adored her and couldn't bear to say a harsh word to her had now become the judge holding a deadly verdict over her entire family, ready to bring it down at any moment. And this was just the appetizer. First, the tax department launched a surprise audit of the Vances' books. Then, the environmental department inspected their factory, issuing hefty fines and ordering a shutdown. Companies that had once been dependent on the Vances began to quietly distance themselves, some even sabotaging them in secret. The Vances couldn't hold on for much longer. Chloe's mother was so worried her hair started turning white. She sought help everywhere, only to find that their once warm friends either avoided them or outright said they couldn't help. The Vance family's cash flow was on the verge of breaking. Their entire world was teetering on the edge of collapse. Chloe's life turned upside down. The glory of the Vance name she once prided herself on quickly faded. They couldn't afford their luxury apartment anymore. The high-end shops she frequented no longer welcomed her. She had to sell all her personal properties. Davies wasn't having it any easier. He had gotten into a top research institute through the Vances' connections, but now gossip about him cheating, being involved in a teacher-student affair, and getting a student pregnant spread like wildfire. He tried hard to prove himself professionally, but his reports were suppressed, and his experimental rights were revoked. The admiring gazes he once received turned into blatant mockery and pity. Chloe couldn't handle it anymore. She and Davies argued more and more frequently. She blamed him for being incompetent, for not being able to protect her and the child. He resented her for being too headstrong and lacking restraint, blaming her for the mess they were in. During one particularly heated argument, Chloe lost control and shouted, pointing at the child in Davies' arms, "It's all because of you. If it weren't for you back then." "Chloe?" Davies sharply interrupted, his face turning pale. "Are you insane? This is your child." Chloe was taken aback by the words that had slipped out. She crouched down, weeping silently. "What can I do? The Sterlings are trying to kill us. My mom scolds me every day. Everyone is laughing at us. Ken, I feel so helpless. What can we do?" A week later, an even bigger storm arrived. Davies was officially reported for academic fraud, and a formal investigation was launched. His world completely collapsed. He locked himself in the shabby little apartment Chloe had managed to rent, keeping the curtains drawn day and night. He knew the consequences of confirmed fraud all too well. Public disgrace, a shattered future, maybe even jail time. "It's him! It has to be Leo," he raved. "He's doing this to destroy us!" Amanda looked at the man descending into madness in front of her, her heart filled with a mixture of disgust and fear. "Who are you blaming now? Why didn't you speak up when you were doing those things?" She looked around at the run-down apartment, the smell of cheap takeout hanging in the air. Over their parents' argument, the baby cried loudly. Outside, reporters were waiting. On the small television, the news of the Vance family going bankrupt was scrolling across the bottom of the screen. "It's over," Amanda whispered, slumping to the floor, her eyes empty. "It's all over." After that, Chloe tried countless times to find me. She even knelt outside the company building for 3 days straight, repeatedly smacking herself in the face. She didn't care about face or reputation anymore. She just wished she could turn back the clock. But there's no medicine for regret in this world. Vance Holdings crumbled to the ground. Professor Davies was arrested. She was left to raise the child alone, unable to afford even the cheapest apartment. The last I heard of her, someone saw her by the seaside, holding her child and staring blankly out at the water. My assistant asked if I wanted to send someone to check on her. I just shook my head. Everyone chooses their own path. I wouldn't interfere with Chloe's life anymore. Our paths would never cross again. Today, The hospital called to say my dad had fully recovered. I went to a flower shop to prepare a bouquet to go pick him up. As I walked in, I spotted a beautiful bouquet at the same time as another woman. Before I could say anything, she quickly drew her hand back with a smile. "If you like it, you can have it," she said. To ease the slight awkwardness, I joked, "Are you giving that to your boyfriend?" She shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. "It's for my deceased brother." Not knowing how to comfort her, I awkwardly said, "My condolences." She suddenly shoved the bouquet into my arms. "That was our dog," she said, her eyes twinkling. "His name was Brother, because as a child, I was always envious of neighbors who had older brothers." She then lightened the mood, sharing amusing stories from her past. Coincidentally, we were both heading to the same hospital. This series of coincidences made me marvel at the wonders of fate. We talked for a long time, and when we parted ways, we exchanged numbers. On the way back to my car, I stared cheerfully into the distance. The people in my memories had long since faded. My road ahead is still long. Sunshine, flowers, and love. You should never try to define anything. They simply create the exciting moments when everything uniquely intertwines.